Yo, what's good, ladies and gentlemen? Acklamar here, and of course, welcome back to each and every one of you to another episode of the Barrens Chat, or just Barrens Chat. The is optional. It is episode 14, and I am, as always, very, very happy to be here with each and every one of you. Digit, how you doing? God of War, how you doing, brother? Growfile, how you doing? God of War, Mr. Colossal, Nick, Bugger Games, Danny, Ronan, Holy, Robert, Ortango, Z Vengeance, Ulgrim, Eugene, Daniel, thank you so much for being here. Very happy to be here with all of you. Anti-Product, how you doing, brother? It is a rainy Friday here in Cape Town. Very, very cold. Brickle J, how you doing? So yeah, I am sitting here very, very cozily in my studio with the heater on because, yeah, it is tough. But the heater also makes me sleepy. I don't know why. I can't do without it because I'm literally sitting here. Like, an hour ago, I didn't have the heater on. And I was sitting here like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm so cold. I switch it on an hour later. I feel like I just want to doze off. I just want to take a little nappy nap. Just rest my eyes a little. Ryan, how you doing? Kimmy, how you doing? Miracos, how you doing? Ladies and gentlemen, it has been some week. Now, of course, as always, the news sort of starts to taper off as we get closer and closer to a new expansion. But then Blizzard goes ahead and they release the Chronicles. How many of you in chat have read the Chronicles? Mr. Colossal, it gets cold, yes, but not as cold as you guys get. But there is explanations for this. So, for example, right now, I believe it's like 15 degrees Celsius. Where I am, let me see, 14 degrees Celsius. But what you have to remember is our houses in South Africa are not built to keep in heat. They're not insulated at all. In fact, they're built to release as much heat as possible because our summers get really warm. So effectively, when it gets cold, it gets in everywhere. Like, your house is literally the exact same temperature inside as it is outside. Sometimes even colder. So yeah, when it is cold, it really is cold. I love getting educated. Dude, that's why I'm here. All right, it's winter down there. Yes, it is our winter. And in Cape Town, it is very wet. I've watched some reviews like Noble. All right. All right, so I think we should just jump into it, right? I mean, what's the point? I think we go dick first into this whole mess. And we talk about the Chronicles. Now, full disclosure, I do not have the Chronicles. I live in South Africa, and it is not even listed on any of our websites here. I think I'm going to have to grab it on the Kindle, even though I hate that, because I hate reading books like this on the Kindle. I think the Kindle is brilliant for, like, storybooks and just sort of novels where you just sort of want to read, you just want to have fun, you don't really care much about really studying the material. The Kindle sucks for stuff, anything WoW related, to be honest with you. I have all of the books, all of the World of Warcraft books on the Kindle, and it sucks because while I'm reading a World of Warcraft book, I like to mark things, right? I like to leave little stickers on the page if I read something that's really interesting or really important, or sometimes I read something later in a book that I think correlates with something earlier in the book. I want to be able to write those things or mark those things so that I can go back whenever and go collect that stuff. As you guys know, I lost my entire book collection when I moved to Cape Town. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's with some family member. I have not actually checked. Or I asked my aunt and she said she has no such thing at her house. So I don't know where that book collection went. But I'm going to buy all of those books. I would love to have this physical copy because with my previous Chronicle books, they were a mess. I would never be able to sell those books again, ever. They were filled with me writing in the book with pencil, not with pen. But I was writing stuff down and I was taking notes and I was sort of, really studying the book. So I would have preferred to do that, but I just want to get my hands on the book so that I can at least read all of it, everything that's in there. Now, you might say, but Acklamar, this deals with lore that we already know. And to that, I would say, yeah, I don't care. I've already finished leveling in World of Warcraft many, many times, and I still do it because it's still fun. So, yeah, I don't care. I still want to get through the lore. Now, let's talk. What have you guys heard about the Chronicles. If you're like me, you've heard pretty much the same stuff. A lot of people complaining about the Chronicles. Is that correct? Is that pretty much... Am I on point here with what I'm saying? Badoom, how you doing, brother? Tomwell, how you doing? Timeline adjustments, okay. Pyro doesn't agree with it. All right, yeah, that's fine. So I'm gonna throw a couple of things out because I think most of us have heard the accusations about it being a very much giant retcons. Now I have gone through Twitter and Reddit and collected pretty much every single person that posted a screenshot of a page in the Chronicles. I have over, I think, 40 pages of the Chronicles, which is good considering the fact that I don't even have the book. But I have about 40 pages of it, of everyone complaining about different reasons. Some of the complaints were so mild and so stupid that it's gonna just rot in my folder for the rest of time. There really is no point in even discussing it. I mean, I have about 5 pages that I've put in a special folder, which is the ones that most people are either complaining about or not necessarily agreeing with, or whatever the case may be. So yeah, I'll say the following. To the giant retcons, and I'm going to make this point very, very sort of broadly, but it is a point that I think we've been seeing for a while now. Now, there's 2 things that we need to understand. Throughout all of the Exploring Azeroth books, so we had Exploring Azeroth, we had all of the continents. Every single one of those books came with a lot of people complaining about retcons and changes and just the books just getting some of the lore completely wrong. Do you guys remember that? We made videos on this. And at the time, I was still on the side of the people complaining about it because I was just like, dude, what's happening at Blizzard? Why is no one quality checking this shit? How do you write an entire book and you just get so many things wrong and no one checks it? Like, there's no one reading these books and going, actually, I think this is really wrong. What's going on here? For those of you that don't know, Blizzard has an entire history department. Last time I checked, they have about 4 Blizzard historians whose only job it is to make sure that the history of WoW remains preserved. So it's not like they don't have the staff or they just don't have the people to check. They have people that check this shit. That's their job, right? So the idea for me was just like, I don't know what's going on at Blizzard. What is this mess? Why is everything seemingly happening in all of the newest books? Pretty much every new book that comes out is just another mess of lore getting wrong and all the rest of it. And then someone said to me, I can't remember who this was, but someone said this to me, and as soon as they mentioned this, I was like, holy shit, I didn't even... And it goes to show what happens when you've been sort of trained as an audience member to just think a specific way about a universe. Every single one of the Exploring Kalimdor books, including the Chronicles, are written from a perspective. They're not written from like an omnipresent narrator. Every single one of the Exploring Kalimdor books was written by an in-universe character. And what you're reading there is their journey through Kalimdor, their journey through the Eastern Kingdoms, their journey through Northrend. You're not reading the official canonical lore of Northrend or of Kalimdor or of the Pandaria Islands. It's very important to understand this. For the longest time now, and I would say for the last, shall we say, let's say for the last 2 years, really, under Steve Denuser, as soon as Metzen came back. And it's very interesting that it was once Metzen really came back that this started to become more and more canonical in the World of Warcraft universe, this perspective-based storytelling, where instead of going, large-scale, full-blown, this is the narrator is God, and whatever the narrator tells you is the word of God, it's more, no, this is written from this person's perspective, and we'll see what happens later on. We saw the first ever experiences of this in World of Warcraft during the Broken Shore. For those of you that don't remember the Broken Shore questline, the Horde and the Alliance saw two very different things on the Broken Shore. For the Horde, we were overpowered. Someone fucked up seriously on that day. We did not realize that the demons had arrived on Azeroth in such number. The Horde was being flanked and could not withstand the assault of the demons, and so had to withdraw. From the Alliance perspective, the Horde abandoned them. The Horde did this because they wanted the Alliance leadership to die, which of course wasn't true, but it doesn't matter because this is exactly what people are trying, what Blizzard is trying to play off of. Since then, we've seen Blizzard sort of toy with the idea, and then of course we had Blizzard completely retcon the Chronicles and say, no, the Chronicles are actually written from the perspective of the Titans. And yes, that was a retcon, because I believe even now, if you go to Amazon to the first version, the first volume of the Chronicles, it still states that it is the official canonical collection of World of Warcraft lore or some shit like that. So it's still, to this day, they haven't fixed or updated the description on Amazon, or maybe they have now, but like 6 months ago they didn't. But Steve Denuser obviously came out and said, no, this is actually not the official lore. This is just from the perspective of the Titans. And that's true for all of the Chronicle books. As far as I know, even this one is also from the perspective of the Titans. Now, there's some of you that might really disagree with perspective-based storytelling. There's some of you that might love it. I happen to fall in the camp of loving it. I think perspective-based storytelling lends itself to a lot more freedom than what canonical-based storytelling does. Canonical-based storytelling, really good for stories that have an end of some kind. Very difficult to pull off in sort of perpetual stories. Not impossible, but very difficult to pull off. Because you really sometimes just paint yourself into a corner that you can't get out of. Whereas with perspective, that's not a problem. Because you can pretty much do whatever you want, right? It's just a perspective at the end of the day. And Warhammer 40k is probably the ultimate example of a perspective story. World of Warcraft, I think, the one danger that Blizzard might run into with their perspective-based storytelling, if that is indeed what they're trying to go after, the thing that I would say that they have to be very careful on is whatever the player sees needs to either be presented in such a way that it is just the player's perspective, or that needs to at least be canonical, right? Because you cannot convince me, as the player, by the way, that I didn't see what I saw, right? Because I absolutely saw that happen. I was there. So I do think in that scenario, Blizzard needs to be very careful. But for their books, they could do the perspective-based storytelling, and it could really, really work. You need some kind of definitive facts of the universe, though, or you can't be invested as much. Benjamin, I would absolutely reject that line of thinking. There is, so the famous line for Warhammer 40k is that everything is true, nothing is canon. That's like a famous line for pretty much every fan for Warhammer 40k accepts this line pretty much wholesale. And it is, as far as we want to talk universes and universes that are explored, it dwarfs World of Warcraft, right? It is far bigger than World of Warcraft. It all depends on how you do it. So I actually think it kind of makes sense from World of Warcraft's perspective that this is the direction that they want to go in. When we look at stuff like the sagas, that's now the new storytelling perspective, I think Blizzard is dreaming a lot bigger, guys. So this is just me speculating now. And I realize that none of this is confirmed. But I think we are about to see an explosion in terms of the Warcraft IP unlike anything we've ever seen before. Now, we know about World of Warcraft, right? We know that World of Warcraft, the War Within is happening, and the World So Saga. But we have the Warcraft IP team, and you do not set up an IP team, a team whose only job it is to preserve the IP, if you don't have massive plans for the IP. If you don't have plans to go into television, to go into TV, movies, books, probably other types of video games, maybe even other studios making video games within this IP, it would be a giant waste of money. Why? We've done perfectly well with the Warcraft IP belonging to the World of Warcraft team up until now. You wouldn't need a separate department unless, of course, that department is going to be business central. And there's going to be a lot of things that happen around it. When you do something like that, trying to do the canonical sort of storytelling route becomes highly problematic, because you are going to deal with different writers at different time frames trying to do different things. And you're maybe going to deal with stories that want to do different things. And if you hold too much of an iron grip on your lore, a lot of those stories will just not be able to be made because, well, you have an iron grip and you don't want to be backed into a corner by someone's storytelling. Whereas this provides you with a much more free environment where you can tell someone, listen here, these are the rules. So this is what we have. You cannot deny what the Titans are. You cannot deny what this is or what that is or what this is. So we have rules. We have certain rules that's laid out. But for everything else, go nuts. Do whatever you want, because we can always just explain that away with, well, that was from their perspective. And players will eventually learn to accept it. I wrote on Twitter, I think we are going to have to accept some form of retcons, be that soft or maybe even in some cases hard retcons from Blizzard in the near future. The reason I think this is just going to happen, and there's not much that we can do about it, Chris Mason clearly has his heart set on this grand story, the sagas. And it's not going to be the only saga, there's going to be many of them. Which to me suggests that if you are going to try and make changes to the story, now's the time to do it. Right? Before the sagas happen, before you start on this new epic journey, now would be the time to make all of the changes so that the players can forget all of these changes. Of course, we never forget. We remember retcons for years and years and decades after. But you can hope that the players may actually forget by the time the first saga is over, moving into the next one. But yeah, fundamentally, I have no problem with the great retcons that is happening, because again, the Chronicles is written from the perspective of the Titans. It is not, in fact, a canonical book. And I think it's going to take time for people to sort of adapt to that. And I feel your pain. Trust me, I feel the frustration from a lot of players that sort of got used to the idea of when you read something in a WoW book, that's the truth. Everything else might be bullshit, but the thing in the book, that is true. I get that, guys. But fundamentally, I think this is just where we are now. I think this is just how we have to accept that this is the new normal, and it doesn't seem like Blizzard is slowing down on this. It seems like they're actually doubling down on it. What's the thoughts? What's the feelings? How do you guys feel about it? This is a big lore comeback. Benjamin, I'm right there with you. Every single one of us have things in life where you thought wrong, and we give them better context. Yeah, that's true. That is true. And I think it also creates a much more it lends itself to a lot more speculation and the lore being a lot more open-ended. Because now, whenever someone says this is what happened, we are absolutely within our rights to say, but did it actually happen that way? Or is that just what you think? And of course, as Ryan just rightfully pointed out there, it affords us the opportunity to say, well, actually, all of the Shadowlands was just your fucking perspective. It didn't happen. It happened in your imagination. Go fuck yourself. We could absolutely do that now, and no one can say we're wrong because it is just a perspective. I happen to not remember being in the Shadowlands at all. So, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but from my perspective, the Shadowlands never happened. I would absolutely love if the Shadowlands could just be a dream, bro. Give me a break on Shadowlands. I think people are going to whine no matter what Blizzard does. It depends what we call whining, right? I think complaints are always better than praise. And I realize that sounds very backward. But I promise you that it is true. While it is amazing to read comments on videos saying, dude, absolutely love what you do. This was my favorite video ever. It's awesome to read that. And there's a lot of value in that because I can look at what I did in that video and say, okay, I need to try and do more of this because clearly there's people that really love this. The comments that help the most are comments from people that complain. Comments from people saying, oh, I didn't really like that you did this, or I didn't really like that you did that. I had a comment from someone on the video from like 2 days ago saying I could absolutely have done without the autistic hand movements at the start of the video. Now, a comment like, I don't know what to do with a comment like that. Maybe I'll figure out what the learning experience in that comment needs to be. But, sometimes comments, the comment section giveth and taketh away at the same time. So, but I think from a gaming perspective, complaints are really helpful because complaints tell you what to do next. It tells you where the audience wants you to go next. And if everyone just praised the game, if everyone just went out of their way to say, oh, wow, best game ever, even if they don't necessarily agree with that or necessarily believe that, what do you as the developers do with that praise? How do you know to do better if no one is actually telling you to do better? So I do think complaints are always going to happen because you're never going to be able to make everyone happy. That's just a fact, right? You cannot make 100% of all people happy all the time. If you try to make everyone happy, you'll probably end up making no one happy. I mean, even now, Eugene, you mentioned this, Final Fantasy XIV. I was under the impression that people loved Final Fantasy XIV and no one would ever allow anyone to say anything bad about Final Fantasy XIV except now whenever I go on the forums and whenever I go on Reddit, it's nothing but fucking complaints. I don't know what happened in the Final Fantasy XIV community. Rurikon seems to think it's the WoW refugees. And that would probably be the most perfect thing ever if it was actually just the WoW refugees. Because remember, prior to Final Fantasy having its glow-up moment, World of Warcraft players were known as the honest ones, right? We're the ones who fucking lose our shit when Blizzard causes, just does stupid crap. But the Final Fantasy XIV community, they were worshipping Yoshi P. And now, it would just be so perfect if Final Fantasy is finally figuring out just how rabid World of Warcraft players are. Look, we're passionate. If there's one thing I can say, it is that WoW players are passionate. We care about our hobby, we care about our world, and we don't like when people fuck it up. We don't like when the developers fuck it up. In fact, we especially don't like when the developers fuck it up. But what's nice is we also don't allow outsiders to say shit about our game. It's sort of like, WoW is ours. It's like your brother. You can bully your brother, but no one else is allowed to do that. We sort of do the same thing with WoW, right? We can say shit about WoW, but no one else can. You just shut your fucking mouth, you dirty non-WoW player. But are we passionate or are we just crazy? Show me what the difference is between that. I don't think there's that much of a difference. As with almost all games, players are surgically accurate with friction points. They're also terrible at suggesting fixes. Andy, I've always said this. You can never trust players to come up with a solution to a problem in a game because all players will only ever come up with a solution that works for them regardless of how it affects the rest of the game. But players are incredible at telling you exactly where the mistake is. They don't necessarily know how to identify or fix the mistake, but they can tell you where it is. So, it is helpful in its own way. One is yelling, the other is walking around, pointing at the sky. Well, we have that too. Have you ever been on Wild Twitter? There's some incredibly stupid people over there. Siva, how you doing, bro? Abaddon, how you doing? You have to earn the right to do shit on this shit game by getting shit on playing this shit game, you shit. I'm looking forward to the next one. I think it's going to be really good. I don't like the reordering of event timelines for BFA that came in Chronicle 4. It doesn't seem to make sense for Jaina's story and to what we experience. I have not read that. Quite frankly, I haven't seen that complaint. So, Brickle J, would you mind very quickly just giving me a rundown what happened there. When you say it doesn't make... what reordering of the timeline? What did they reorder? I paid my dues, I did them more, and for some sane reason, ran 6 tunes through Torghast for 2 seasons. Wow, you crazy fuck. Says the Alliance story came before the Horde story in BFA. Oh, I wouldn't say that it completely doesn't make sense. Jaina going back to find her people in order to fight the Horde, and then Sylvanas reacting to Jaina and then finding, the long-lost troll tribes. I think it I think it works. I'm not sure how that would break the lore in its entirety. But I'd have to read it and I'd have to think about it, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not entirely sure if I disagree with the reordering there. Because the reason a reordering of the timeline probably makes a lot of sense there, someone needs to explain why Sylvanas went to Zandalari in the first place, right? Went to the Zandalar. Like, what's the purpose? And in this instance, the purpose would obviously be seeing Jaina go to Kultiris. Kind of makes sense that she would now go seek allies as well, because if Jaina and the Alliance get the Kultira Navy and the Horde gets no one, the Horde is pretty much fucked, right? The Horde can fight the Alliance all day long, but not with the Kultira Navy in tow. So that would probably be a mistake, right? Prison, because she was looking to open diplomatic relations with the Horde. San Quantra, how are you doing? Timeline adjustments, or someone's narrative is directing the retelling of these events. Again, if you own the past, you can dictate the future. I wouldn't even know if this is specifically changing of the canon. Wait, no. When you look at Talanji's story, Talanji is captured by the Alliance, no? I'm trying to remember, dude. I've done my utmost to block out everything BFA, and Shadowlands. Talanji is captured by the Alliance. You have to go in and save her. I remember the quest line there, and then that's how the Horde gets dragged into it. But again, I don't necessarily see how that would ruin the timeline specifically. I think it does make the timeline questionable maybe a little, but I don't see how it ruins the timeline. It does cause some doubt, but then again, we never really saw the exact start of BFA. Right? We just saw after things had already been in motion a little bit. That's when we really saw. That's when we got into the story. It's like, for example, with the dungeons. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but a part of this now makes canonically the different dungeons and the different raids within World of Warcraft, and who completed which raids and who was involved in which raids, which I also thought was actually really cool to see that at least canonically, not every dungeon and every raid is done by both factions. The majority is, but there are dungeons that, for example, in Battle for Azeroth, I believe, Crucible of the Storms was one that was a Horde, right? The others are pretty much both factions. I don't know, Drustvar, Alliance story, there was buzzing. Oh yeah, Drustvar was, well, actually, funny story. If you exclude the rest of PFA, Drustvar is probably one of the greatest zones Blizzard ever designed. It just is. From a storytelling perspective, from an aesthetic perspective, it is just a phenomenal zone. And I oftentimes think Revendreth probably sort of had a similar vibe to Drustvar, and that's why people loved Revendreth as much as well, because it was a similar vibe. It was a dark vibe, right? There's a very sort of dark undertone to it, which I think a lot of people just automatically really enjoyed. Okay, we're gonna talk about the Aggramar thing. or the admiral in charge of the Kultura Navy. Why bother fighting the Horde? They just steamroll them with the superior navy before they could ever get with the trolls. So, Brickle J, are you certain that the entirety of the story happened before the Horde storyline? Because that would not make sense at all, right? But they may actually just mean in the story. Brickle J, can I ask you, will you DM me just a screenshot of the page on Discord? Just send me a DM of the passage that you're referring to. It can be a picture or a screenshot. I don't know if you have it a digital or physical copy, but just so that I can see that passage, because it might just mean that Jaina started the events. It might not mean that all of Jaina's story happened before the Horde even started. It might just be that Jaina was the first to act. So Jaina maybe acted a week or two before the Horde or some shit like that. So yeah, I would, if you wouldn't mind, I would just love to see that. Edward, how you doing, brother? While you're jumping around, how can Sargeras be outside of Azeroth and stab a sword wherever he wanted? But he waited until the Pantheon pulled him in. Doesn't make sense. Edward, You are asking a question, my friend, that we have asked on this channel many, many times. There's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense with Sargeras. I'm just going to be very honest with you guys. Sargeras' entire storyline makes no sense. There's just too many things in the relationship between Sargeras and Zuval that makes no sense. Too many of the actions with Sargeras that makes no sense. I'm hoping that we get some form of discussion or maybe some form of a revelation in Midnight, maybe in The Last Titan. That's what I'm really hoping for. That's my hope, at least, is that's what we're gonna get there. And no, as to the giant elephant in the room, Aggramar and the Seed of the Pantheon. Now, I have already made a video on this yesterday. The video isn't out yet. The video will release tomorrow afternoon, or maybe I'll just make it live after the podcast. What would you guys prefer? After the podcast or tomorrow? When will suit you best? Because the video is done. I'm just not sure if the thumbnails are done. They should be. I think Kat is busy with them now. But yeah, as soon as the thumbnails are done, I can upload it. I've made a video on this already, but I will go over just some of the discussions there without going into too much detail, because there's a lot of speculation on this one. So I'll just say the following. How convinced are you guys that we absolutely did not fight Aggramar at the Seed of the Pantheon? Few words that indicated is after. Oh, Magar. Man, I want to read that book, but that does make a little bit of sense, right? No. No. I'm asking you, how many of you are absolutely convinced that we did not defeat Aggramar at the Seat of the Pantheon? Because that, by the way, is one of the largest complaints from the new Chronicle version 4, or volume 4. And that is that in the book, it absolutely, with unequivocally, states that we fought Aggramar at the Seat of the Pantheon. So I am asking, how many of you absolutely think that is just wrong? It cannot. No, I don't mean Argus. I mean Aggramar. Not Argus. I mean Aggramar. Guys. I am not misspeaking. I am not misspeaking. I am saying the correct words. You guys have to listen to what I'm saying. Let me just see. Where did I... Was it in replies? Here we go. From Pyromonster. There you go. Okay. This is from the book itself, right? So, at the seat of the Pantheon, the very cradle of creation, the heroes engaged Aggramar in battle. So, how many of you are convinced that this line in Chronicle Volume 4 is wrong? It is just completely and utterly devoid of any information that is true as pertaining to our experiences in World of Warcraft. Aggramar is the titan that was cleaved in half by Sargeras. All right. Even Pyro agrees with you guys. Even Pyro says, we super didn't fight Aggramar at the seat of the Pantheon. Pyro agrees with you. So, it is safe to assume that most of you believe that it is completely wrong. How many of you know exactly where or how large the original seat of the Pantheon was? Are you absolutely convinced that that round circle that has nothing else in it except for a platform where a bunch of people can sit, are you certain that that is the only seat of the Pantheon, that that is the original seat of the Pantheon and there was never anything else attached to it? Are you convinced of that? You get it, Gray. I am suggesting that Argus was the original location of the seat of the Pantheon. I am suggesting that Antorus the Burning Throne was once a much larger part of the seat of the Pantheon, and that Sargeras took that part for himself as his new demon army headquarters after he destroyed the Titans, in order to get all of the records, all of the information, all of the locations, because the Titans would have had to store the information of their travels throughout the Great Beyond somewhere. No? It might have been inside Antorus the Burning Throne. Was likely the original Arbiter location. That's also possible. Not now. You're saying all these words. I'm pretty unconvinced of my own tune's name at this point. And then he recruited the Eridar after he took it. I can see that. Looks like a place only mortals can see. Or original soul entrance. It can be a lot of things. But the thing that I'm actually after here is that what if this isn't... Because remember, we're speculating here, right? And we could look at this and say this is just another example of Blizzard completely getting everything wrong. Or we could say, what if this is Blizzard actually getting it right? And what if there is some information hidden within this that we have not yet known? And that this is the first time that we learn about this information. Just because of mistake. Dante recap, the only reason I am throwing this out there is there are two possible options that we have to start facing here. Option number one is that Blizzard is wholly and utterly incompetent and they don't know how to write a book, which would be fucking problematic, considering the fact that they have an IP team now whose job it is to make sure that the lore of World of Warcraft is competently written and competently duplicated in other forms of media. This means that this Blizzard is incompetent and don't know what the hell they're doing, which bodes really badly for any future movies, films, TV, and books that may or may not be coming out. Or this was not a mistake. This is there because this is what they wanted it to be. As what they were at that time, to be fair. Well, this book wasn't written necessarily at that time, though, right? So I wouldn't like, this book was very much written under the tutelage of Chris Mayton. That's why I say, because theory really does hold water. I think so. I don't think there's anything in the lore that disputes that theory, because we just don't know, right? What we do know about Argus is only what the Titans ever told us. What we know about Sargeras and their original battles is only what the Titans ever told us. So fundamentally, yes, there is a lot of things that we just do not know about the Titans. And there's a lot of things the Titans have actively hidden from us that they don't want us to know. So I would be surprised, to say the least, if this was in fact a mistake. I don't think it is, and I think this makes that entire storyline even more interesting. It adds so much more mystery to that storyline, at least in my opinion. I'm a rich bitch now. Ryan, thank you so much for the $5, man. Really appreciate you. I'm not sure if there's a TTS on this. There should be TTS on this. But if there isn't, I promise I will fix that. I will activate that. Think about this question in the context of perspective storytelling. What if the Titans want to wipe Argus the Titan under the rug? Again, very possible, right? If we are saying the Chronicles is written from the Titan perspective, then it is entirely possible that from the Titan perspective, they were not going to tell us that we fought Argus. They're hoping everyone forgets that Argus is even a thing, right? And it wouldn't be the first time that Titans do this quite often. So yeah, I can see that, Ryan. That's as good a theory as any. But we do know one thing: Gammon will save us. This is true, Thomas. I can see that. Yes, absolutely. Maybe actually written by Pepe, the Dreadlord. He's already invaded our plane of existence in the real world. Any more thoughts on the Empire, Akko? Grofal, not at the moment. I think we need to learn more about the Empire before we can really get into that. I will say, though, for anyone that is still sort of struggling with doubts as to what Blizzard's idea is for writing, is there anyone that still hopes that Blizzard isn't going to continue with this perspective-based storytelling? You're really hoping that Blizzard is going to give up on this, or we're just all wrong, and actually we're going to get, no more of this. We're going to go back to the old way of writing World of Warcraft lore. Ronan, so I believe that the Nathrazim, as well as Sire Denathrius, is currently in charge of the Realms of Disorder. Corner, so they'll figure it out. So here's the thing. This started already becoming a lot more mainstream in Dragonflight. And I think Blizzard is truly doing a great job of preparing the player base for exactly this. Do you guys remember this? Nalfarian's annotations. Do you guys remember this? Where you had, remember, previously, this in-game World of Warcraft book was entirely canonical. In-game books in World of Warcraft, for the most part, were absolute canonical. Because they were books, right? And they were books written down, and why would you have any reason not to believe them? And in Dragonflight, we got this, the annotated versions of this book, where Nalfarian would scribble notes on these books, on the pages. Unaware of Sargeras' mission to undo their countless works, the Titans continue to move from world to world, shaping and ordering each planet as they saw fit. Along their journey, they happened upon a small world that its inhabitants would later name Azeroth. Pathetic. What sort of saviors of the universe failed to notice that their efforts were being undermined by one of their own? And you have even greater ones where he actively says that they are the ones that's wrong. Evil, according to whom? It was these titans who maligned the glory of the Black Empire. Right? So fundamentally, Blizzard is already playing deeply into this. Blizzard is starting to move the player base of World of Warcraft into a position where we question everything. I, for one, cannot wait for that. If you've ever listened to Warhammer 40k content creators argue over the lore of Warhammer 40k, you will understand why this is the most fun thing that could happen to World of Warcraft. In a world where everything is possible and it is very difficult to discern what is actual truth, it opens up the room for so much discussion as well as speculation about what the potential of a story could be. I think if you were hoping that Blizzard was going to go back to the old storytelling, you're just shit out of luck. I don't think that's happening. I think Blizzard is pretty sold on this idea. What was done to him is why he went on his crusade. I think so as well. So my thinking, at least, is that we will learn eventually that Nalfarian didn't turn against the Titans out of spite or just because of the old gods. I think Nalfarian turned against the Titans and against the other aspects when he figured out what happened. When he finally figured out what the Titans had done. He was clearly very, very nosy, and he looked for information wherever he could find it. And I think he uncovered the truth of everything that happened to them. Everything that shouldn't have happened to them. And there's a very interesting little tidbit of this already in Dawn of the Aspects. I don't know if you've ever read that. Very, very small, insignificant little book in World of Warcraft's history. No, it's not. You should absolutely read that. But Dawn of the Ancients, Dawn of the Aspects, sorry. Dawn of the Aspects has, right at the end, when the Watchers, when they ask the Aspects whether or not they would willingly accept the power of the Titans. All of the other aspects are like, yeah, sure, let's do this. No problem. Let's go for it. Except for Nalfarian. Nalfarian is seen in the book staring off towards the mountains, listening as if he's hearing something. And he's just standing there looking into the distance. And the book almost makes it seem like he's listening intently for something. And then it's Alexstrasza that growls at him. And that sort of snaps him out of, he's sort of looking at the mountains. And he just sort of goes, yes, yes. Like just very quickly, yeah, it's fine. So you can clearly see something happened there to Nalfarian already at that moment. He was already being, visited by either the old gods or someone was trying to warn him of something. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Nalfarian is an equally unreliable narrator. Of course, but that's the whole point. You see, that is the whole point. We are going and moving towards a world where everyone is an unreliable narrator. Which means, in about a year from now, we're gonna sit here and argue for 2 hours on a Friday night about the simplest little bit of lore, where some of you guys are gonna say, no, clearly that's what they meant. And we're like, no, if you read the fucking quest and you just look at this and this and this, you'll see that's clearly what was meant there. And someone asking me like, no, bro, you don't know what you're talking about. Clearly this is what I saw. So we're definitely moving into a world now where we're going to be arguing with each other pretty much non-stop about what the lore actually means. in World of Warcraft and where we're actually going, what actually happened. I'm excited for that. I'm really looking forward to that. God, how you doing? I think the notes gave a lot of character development to Northarian. I liked it a lot. I'm with you there, Benjamin. I also enjoyed them a lot. In fact, I think Dragonflight was the first expansion ever where I really enjoyed the in-game books. Like, usually in-game books are just sort of like, nah, who cares? But in Dragonflight, the in-game books were some of the highlights of the lore. Not that the other lore wasn't good, but it genuinely was some of the highlights, in my opinion, of the lore. So, yeah, Q D&D rules, lawyering the lore. Oh, speaking of D&D, do you guys remember John Haidt? Oh, God, I'm assuming you remember John Haidt? John Haidt, the previous executive producer for World of Warcraft. Yeah, so his new job is now the president of Wizards of the Coast. In other words, the Baldur's Gate people. I don't know. I'm not even entirely sure if there is anything to speculate on here, but it's weird to me that someone with such a background in World of Warcraft, in MMO specifically, would go and work for Wizards of the Coast, a company that famously doesn't make any of their own games. They basically just give it to other people to make, right? I don't quite understand why he would... I mean, from a business perspective, from a personal career perspective, probably the best move he could ever make. If I'm not mistaken, I think Wizards of the Coast is far larger than Blizzard. This company is massive, right? And they have a massive team behind them. And it's a massive industry, the whole D&D universe. It's just... I don't know. Do you guys think there's any chance that Wizards of the Coast may be looking into making their own MMO? Do you think there's a chance of that? Because I'm just trying to make sense of hiring John Haidt, a man that, you know, spent most of his professional career working at World of Warcraft on an MMO. Why else bring him online? You know? People are not happy at all. Benjamin, what aren't they happy with? So are they gearing up for another D&D MMO? Hannes, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that's exactly what they're gearing up for. And that's why they're bringing John Haidt over, because he was the executive producer, meaning he was the guy in charge of building the teams for it, right? He was the guy in charge of making sure that they had the right team in order to make that universe a reality. Perhaps they already have something getting worked on. Their games suck. Most of their games suck. That is true. But then again, you do have, their games that they give to other companies to make tend to be pretty good. But yes, it is true. There are a lot of their games that suck monkey dick. So I'm just wondering, because the fact is, it's actually criminal that a game like D&D doesn't have its own MMO. Considering the size and the scope of that world, it would be perfect as an MMO. You know, and the one that they have is so shit that no one wants to play it. So you do kind of go, how did you guys screw this up so badly? You have the perfect world for an MMO. You already have all of these classes, all of these races, all of this lore. How on earth do you ruin that? How do you get that wrong? I don't understand. But that probably lends itself to another discussion that we should be having. I don't know how many of you know this, but the most recent information... I should probably start by asking this of you guys. How many of you play World of Warcraft predominantly for the story? So maybe you do other things as well, but the story really is the thing that drives you and makes you want to play almost always. All right, anti-product. Go-kart, Robert, I play for both. So yeah, they need the man's experience. No longer, sadly, by the way. But why I started, all right. And PvP, yeah, I'm for the story mostly. Story and CE are about equal for me. Mostly I'm a raider, spam mythics, but I love the world and lore. So here's some information for all of you about the War Within. So it has now been confirmed that the campaign for the War Within is the shortest expansion campaign Blizzard has ever done. It's much, much shorter than any of the previous expansions. However, there are far more side quests in the game than ever before. So what Blizzard did was they decided to follow a new sort of, let's call it a new philosophy. The new philosophy is the main storyline will tell the broad strokes lore. In other words, it will deal with the world building. It will deal with the lore. Very little narrative, just sort of, what do you need to know in order to at least know everything, right? Or at least enough that you understand what is going on here. Nothing more, nothing less. The overwhelming majority of story has been moved to side questing. So that for those of us that love the quests and love the lore, we will do side quests, and those side quests will be the thing that gives the lore, gives the actual story, the stories of the zone, because they really did spend, according to Blizzard, they spent an enormous amount of time building out the lore of every single zone. So that every single zone has really its own stories that it tells, and in very, very much depth. What do you guys think of that? Do you like it? Do you hate it? What's your thoughts on this before I give my opinion? Feels like Elden Ring, all right. Sounds like Swatter, kind of, okay. Balance is the main story of the game with the zone stories. I haven't tuned into any of the beta stories, so can't really comment until I see how it's done, plays out. I think it's amazing. I always thought the main quest focus was at the expense of the lore. I'll give it a shot. Hopefully it feels fun to play and not a BFA slog. So here's my thinking on it. And everything I'm about to say is conditional on the idea that Blizzard does it exactly in the way that I think they do it. Right? So the conditions here are, if Blizzard follows my advice to the fucking letter, then this is a great change. If they don't, then this might be a shit change. So just know that those are the conditions laid out in my answer here. But okay. I think this is a phenomenally good idea. And here's the reason for it. World of Warcraft has an incredibly diverse group of players. Some players play purely for the story. Some players play purely for raiding. Some players purely for dungeons, some for PvP, some just for mount collection or transmog collection. There are almost no players in World of Warcraft that play World of Warcraft for everything. And more often than not, if you're a player that plays for hardcore raid or hardcore mythic plus, you probably don't give a shit about the story. If you're someone that plays for PvP, I almost guarantee you don't give a shit about the story. So if Blizzard ever tried to really lean into story, so if Blizzard ever tried to really move the game towards the story, you would get a lot of people very, very angry. Because why the hell is it taking me so long to level? Why is there so much dialogue? Why are people talking so much? Why is it sending me all over the place collecting things I don't give a shit about? All of this stuff would be complaints that people would levy because they play the game purely to get to the end game so that they can start doing their end game stuff. But on the flip side of that, so Blizzard basically have always had to design the game with those players in mind. which oftentimes means that for us, the lore nerds of the game, sometimes the story almost feels rushed. It feels like it's an afterthought. The dialogue is done really, really sloppily, where you get an entire monologue worth of knowledge being dropped into a little page like this. And you're like, dude, this is not how real people talk. Why is the dialogue so shit in World of Warcraft? Well, it's that shit because the overwhelming majority of players couldn't give two fucks about that dialogue, right? In fact, if you could remove that dialogue, they'd probably be happier with it. So fundamentally, it's never been good for anyone the way it used to be done. So I think if Blizzard used this opportunity to basically say, right, the main storyline, short, sweet, to the point, get you to max level. The side quest, on the other hand, because we now know, and Blizzard have already said that they're spending time balancing the game in such a way that you will basically only need to do the main storyline to get to max level. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to do every quest. You'll get to max level just fine by doing the main storyline. This means that Blizzard can put a lot more effort and detail into the side stories. And we might actually be able to get side stories that do the dialogue the way that we want to do it. And I'll give you guys a great example of this. This is a topic that I've wanted to discuss for the last 3, almost 4 weeks of Barrens Chats. And every single time we get busy with other things and I can't discuss that. I have noticed just in the last few Wowhead posts about dialogue happening in World of Warcraft, a major shift in the dialogue model of World of Warcraft in the War Within. And I'm specifically referring to the most recent example of this, Anduin and Phelan. Anduin and Phelan. Is it Phelan? Phelan. The lady with the white, the light lady. It's Phelan, right? Anyways, if you go and read the dialogue between Anduin and Phelan, thank you. Okay, so it is Phelan. If you go and read the dialogue between Anduin and Phelan, the dialogue reads for the first time in World of Warcraft's history like a conversation happening between two fucking people. Right? For the first time ever. Like, let me see if I can quickly find this for you guys. Anduin and Phelan. Here we go. Is it this one? Is it Phelan's history? Yeah, here we go. So if you just read this first one, yeah, right? Phelan chuckles. Phelan Lothar says, "No, my family is still in the Empire. I stowed away on the expedition because I too heard Beladar's call. I was never supposed to be here." Anduin says, "You left home so young. Your parents must be worried sick. If my parents had their way, I'd be locked in a library, drafting documents on economics or something. I chose this life. My parents never saw me as anything other than a disappointment. I used to think my father was just as disappointed in me. By the end, I like to think we finally started to understand each other. I hope you get the same chance with your family." Farron smiles ruefully. "That would require me ever going back." Now this, if you compare just this little dialogue here to the final cinematics of Dragonflight, with the dragons dumping their exposition all over the cinematic, this is a massive improvement in dialogue. Because reading this, it's not perfect. Just to be clear, we're still a long ways off from perfect. There's still a little bit too much matter-of-factly in this dialogue. But it reads like normal people would speak to one another. You could imagine two normal people actually speaking like this, right? And that's what I mean when I say it feels like Blizzard is going to lean quite heavily into the storytelling on the side quest part of the game now, rather than in the main storyline. That way, Blizzard really affords the ability to ensure that everyone is happy. The lore nerds like we get shit tons of side quests that tells a crap ton of story that we can really deep dive into and just explore and enjoy. And those who don't care about the story at all, they just go straight to max level and then they go kill stuff. I think personally that's a win for everyone. Does anyone disagree with that? Main storyline, you get to 76 levels, so you will need to do side quests. Okay, so Siva, they already mentioned that they're not done balancing. So they're going to work out exactly how much XP is required to get you to max level. So right now, looking at the beta, there's a couple of things you're missing. So firstly, you're missing a giant intro storyline, according to Blizzard, that is not on the beta. And you're also missing the last part of the quest line that will get you to max level. That is also not on the beta. So we don't get to taste the first and the last parts of the quest line. You start sort of, at some point in the story and you're playing through that point, and you also end before you actually get to the end. So yeah, right now I would say don't judge the story yet. Blizzard did confirm that they're not done balancing the XP amounts on the quests. And then also, I think what will happen is you'll probably still have to do some form of side questing, but it won't be, you don't have to do all of the side quests. I would personally, if I was Blizzard here again, if it was me, I would do it so you don't have to do any of the side quests, because the problem is if you tell players you need to do some side quests, but you don't need to do all side quests, how the fuck is a player supposed to know which side quests should they not do? It just creates this mess of, well, am I going to do 2 side quests in every single zone? Do I do 4? Do I do 10? Do I do all? What do I do exactly? Right? So I personally think it would probably be better if you just said, if you level through the whole main storyline and you do all of the dungeons, you get to max level, no questions asked. So that's what I would like to see, right? You will help him find his light. Hello there, but late from work. Shield Games, how was work, bro? Just do it all and enjoy their art. Or Tongo, the thing is, you have a lot of players that don't care, right? That's just how it is. You do have a lot of players who don't care. Pratir, how you doing, bro? You best tell me which side quest. I just want max, please. See, there you go, right? So you have Pre-tier, for example, couldn't care less about any of the storylines. And there are a lot of people, actually, that raid, love the WoW story, but they'll get it from content creators. They don't want to read the quest in the game. They don't care about doing the quest themselves. They'll watch content creators, and the content creators tell them what the story is. And again, there's no wrong way to play World of Warcraft. There's just your way and the way that you enjoy playing it. And it's Blizzard's job to figure out. Now, I did see something interesting. I saw some interesting suggestions, which I also thought could actually be cool. Someone suggested that what if Blizzard just completely removed questing as the only way of getting to max level? How would you guys feel about that? What if questing and doing the quests of the game was not a prerequisite for getting to max level? So kind of like, you guys remember back in the day when you could speak to a dude before you started the quest on one of your alts, and you could actually level by just doing world quests and stuff? But what if that was just the way to play? So you could literally decide, I don't give a fuck about doing any quest lines. I'm just going to do dungeons all the way to max level, and then I'm going to start raiding and shit. Do you guys think that would be good or bad? How do you feel? You mean a credit card? No, not the credit card version. That's a whole different dude you have to talk to. No, still in the game. You're still leveling, like actually physically doing it yourself. You're not just swiping. But yeah, I would get tired of going through them after a while. I have a bunch of alts. TJ, but remember, all we're saying here is it's another option. It's another way for you to level. You can do the quests, but you don't have to. Everyone minds doing it once. Holy, again, I'm not suggesting that, people mind doing it once. I'm saying, so the idea from this person, specifically, was if you removed quests as a sort of mandatory element of the game, you could actually put a lot more effort into the questing. Because, so this is from a person that actually used to work at Blizzard, just FYI. I'll quickly find the post for you guys. Eric Covington, I believe his name is. But he used to work at Blizzard. Here you go. So Eric Covington said the following. WoW is not Final Fantasy XIV. One is an MMORPG with narrative elements attached to it, while the other is a narrative RPG with MMO elements attached to it. And then he replies again and he says, the leveling campaign is a free way for people to get to endgame. Until other viable leveling paths are supported, I fear that campaign storytelling will always feel undercut so that non-story players can rush through it. So this is from a person that used to work at Blizzard, which should give you a sense of why the stories in World of Warcraft isn't as involved as some of us would want it to be, right? Because from Blizzard's perspective, they know that there are some players who just don't give a shit. If you suddenly created a completely different way for people to level so that people who want to raid didn't have to do a single quest if they didn't feel like it, then you could really make a very in-depth storyline, right? Final Fantasy XIV has a tower system for leveling alts. If you don't want to do questing, I think WoW should do the same. I think WoW can definitely do something like a tower system. Don't want FF-style storytelling in WoW. I want to enjoy the story as well and not in an FF way. Holy, we're not talking about an FF way. We're talking about a story that is told well. Don't get fucking caught up on the FF bullshit. Think for yourself. It's not that hard. All you have to imagine is a story that is actually told and not just dropped, which is what we have a lot of the time now in World of Warcraft. The story isn't told. You get to a quest giver, they drop this much lore that is basically just a collection of them dropping exposition on you, and then you move on and you go kill a bunch of shit. Whereas you could very easily do the quest line with actual narration alongside it, actual voice acting for the quests and for the quest givers. The quest givers actually having dialogue with you rather than just dropping a bunch of exposition points on you and moving forward. Although right now Blizzard has to do that because they have a bunch of people that absolutely will not read through 7 pages of dialogue. They want to just click, 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 let's go. Let's go kill stuff and let's get to max level. I should say why I have leveling in the game. You open an interesting can of worms there. Because that is also a suggestion that I thought about. The idea of not even having questing in the first place. Or not even having levels in the first place. My guess would be the only reason we currently have levels in World of Warcraft is because it's always had levels. You know? It's sort of like one of those legacy things. Because, yes, fundamentally, you could remove the levels of World of Warcraft, right? You could just attach actual progression to gear and to skill. Doing harder shit gives you better gear, makes you stronger to do harder shit. And you don't have to really level in order to do that. But I also think that if you were to remove that, it would make expansions feel smaller in a way. You know? Because fundamentally, a huge part of expansions is the leveling, and also a huge part of the fun of expansions, I hate to say this, is knowing you're going to get more levels. You know that there's going to be 10 levels that you're going to be gaining, and that's a huge plus. That's a really fun part of the expansion. Imagine if a new expansion came out and you just immediately jumped into the newest dungeons and into the newest raid with no levels whatsoever. How would that feel from a player perspective, right? But levels give you a better RPG and sensation, isn't it? Not necessarily, John. You could have an RPG sensation without the levels, right? It all depends on how you want to design the game. You could design it in whichever way you want, as long as the way in which you design it is consistent and it tells a proper story. You could absolutely get away with it, right? Guild Wars 2, Turmoil, great example of a game that doesn't have levels. You go to level 50 on your first leveling is to level 50. But from there, they have horizontal progression, right? So every expansion just moves horizontally. It never moves up. There is no vertical progression in the game. It's always like this. And they have their own ways of making that fun and making players feel like there still is progression. And there still is something that they're doing. There's very many ways of selling, that concept, that RPG feel. I'll use another example of a game that, oh man, such a good game, Elden Ring. We've been streaming Elden Ring now for, how long have we been streaming that? Those of you that come over to Twitch, we've been streaming it now for 3 weeks, maybe, I want to say. This is my first ever Souls game, so I'm pretty fucking noob at the thing. But in that game, there are no quests. Right, not a single quest, right? There are quests, but they're not really quests. They're more like you talk to someone and that someone tells you that they need something, but they sort of tell you like anyone would tell you that they need something. And you can either go get the thing for them or you could just ignore them and just go kill a bunch of shit. That doesn't really fucking matter, right? There's no quest log. There's no quest journal. There's no thing that pops up that says you just accepted a quest. It's more like you're talking to someone and they're telling you their father is in a castle. And you sort of go, oh, okay. And they go, if you see him, would you give him this letter? And you're like, oh, okay. And then what I did was I got to the castle, spoke to her dad, and then killed her dad. So, yeah. That's the thing that you can do. So, it really plays in whichever way you want it to play, fundamentally. And it nails the RPG feel perfectly. It feels like an RPG. It's really good, but it tells its own thing, and it's trying to. It keeps it's how do you say it? It's consistent in what it is, and that's really all you need is that consistency, right? Nano levels make it more acceptable to increase gearing time and makes reputations feel more meaningful. You could probably say that as well. I would be interested in a leveling system that incentivizes participation in big world events, such as battles and world bosses. Yeah, again, I think I'm very much in agreement with Eric here, if I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm in agreement with Eric in that I think more options to level to max level outside of questing is just a better idea. I think why lock a bunch of players that hate the story and couldn't give two shits about the story? Why lock them into leveling in the first place? They don't care about the story, right? They don't want to see the story at all. Make the story optional and just give them the ability. And the reason I say this is you can imagine in the real world, if we were heroes running around with swords and staves and stuff and doing shit, some people would be very helpful and they would talk to people and do everyone favors. But other people would just run around, kill shit and go nuts, right? That's sort of, if you think about how the hero would be, every hero is going to be completely unique in how they want to get to max level. You are absolutely going to get some Cartman-looking fuck farming a bunch of boars, right? Because that's just what he does. He doesn't do anyone any favors whatsoever. He just farms boars. And I think that you should absolutely allow players to be able to play that way, if that is how they prefer. Is there anyone that can think of a reason why that shouldn't be in the game? Why questing should at least be mandatory on your first playthrough? During the Black Empire part, it says Nyalotha. I did announce. Yes. I noticed that. What is stopping players from grinding dungeons to max level? Well, the question would be, why would you need to stop that? Or are you asking what is currently stopping players from grinding dungeons to max level? What's your question? Spurkaside, how you doing, brother? No, I don't know what you refer to as big. You might have to rewatch because we've been discussing quite a bunch of stuff. The right raid attunement to it, I could see a reason. That could be a reason, but without an actual tie, there isn't one currently. Aggramar Fastfang, so again, I'm asking, in a world where Blizzard decided to give people multiple ways of leveling and questing was completely optional, you didn't have to do questing if you didn't want to, can you see a reason why Blizzard should do that or shouldn't do that? So in other words, you think, no, people should at least quest. Like, at least once they should do the main storyline. Or else, right? What would be that or else? But the Grey, what you would need to understand is that in modern day WoW, you would not be able to do all of the dungeons because a lot of the dungeons only open up as a result of quests. There would also probably be some raids that would be very difficult to enter into because those raids also only open up because of quests. So there would be some limitations, and also, especially during the era of borrowed power, a lot of the borrowed power would open up because of quests. So if you don't do the quest, you can't get the borrowed power, you're shut out of luck. So, at the moment, you would probably have a very hard time just doing dungeons to max level. You'd be able to get to the level of max level, but you'd probably only be spamming the first dungeon because you would not be able to go to any of the other zones, most likely. You can think of, for example, Shadowlands. Let's go back to Shadowlands. If in Shadowlands you decided to only level through the dungeons, you would have to do the first storyline right up until the dungeons so that the dungeon actually opens for you. And then you can do that dungeon and no other dungeon. And you can't go to any of the other zones because you have not done the quest line that opens up to the other zones. So you can't get to those dungeons either, which means this dungeon is the only dungeon you can ever go to, and you can't go to any of the other zones because you didn't do the quest line that takes you to the other zones. So you're shut out of luck either way. So the progression in World of Warcraft has fundamentally always been tied to the leveling system. Guess I hadn't noticed that there were dungeon raid unlocks. Well, yeah, there's a lot of dungeons in World of Warcraft. Not all. I believe there are some dungeons that is there from the beginning, but there are a lot of dungeons in World of Warcraft that are phased until you complete the unphasing process, so to speak. From an RP perspective, some people might like being a Delve dungeon-only leveler, but that's a small amount of people. Well, again, if you can... Okay, so the reason I'm asking you guys, can you think of a reason not to do it? Is even if this change only benefits about 5% of the player base, if it doesn't have any major drawbacks, should you not try to benefit that 5% of the player base? If it doesn't destroy the game for literally anyone else, is that not a worthy goal? Because I'm always going to do the quests. The quests is one of the main reasons I buy the new expansion. But I'm also cognizant of the fact that there are people who don't. And they don't want to, I love a Sylvanas on my lap right now, but we can't get all we want. Yes, but in this world where we can discuss what we could get, we can. So, it is what it is. Well, Andy Burdick, I don't think any resources would be diverted in this. It would just be what it is, People would just do what they do. So... And now we have delves coming in, we have dungeons coming in, we have raids, we have scenarios that might become a thing in the near future. We even have the ability to go to all the raids. I think the amount of ways in which you can level now is just perfect for basically giving people multiple ways of leveling, Generally agree with giving players more options, but think it's better for the game if there's a concise main story quest line that unlocks endgame. I don't care if someone wants to level a certain way, that's fine by me, as long as I'm not forced to do it their way. That's exactly my point, Brittle. We don't want to be forced. Imagine if Blizzard forced every single one of us to do dungeons unto max level before we can unlock the quest line. So there are no quests in the game until you have spammed 500 dungeons to get to max level, and only then can you start doing the quest line. How many of you would lose your fucking minds at that change? I'm assuming for a lot of you that would be probably close to a deal breaker. That would be the moment that you'd probably look at WoW and go, am I still really interested in playing this? Now recognize that that is how a lot of players feel in World of Warcraft. I want to do raids and Mythic Plus, and yet I'm forced to do this questline bullshit when I don't give a shit about the questline, right? So I have to go through this entire thing that I couldn't care less about just so that I can start doing the things that I actually care about. So I think it's helpful when you start looking at it in the reverse. You sort of get an answer there, right? Playing, then it's Dungeon of Warcraft. That would be obnoxious. Main difference is quests are iconic to WoW. Players go in knowing it's part of the foundation of the game. But the gray, again, people change, right? Foundations change. The way people approach the game changes. And especially in World of Warcraft, where the game is already as fragmented as it is amongst the player base, it is something that you have to look at, you know? All doing hardly any quest before. For me, it was pretty boring. I agree with you, Brittle J. I only ever once leveled an alt with the... What was that system in Shadowlands called? Where you could talk to the dude, and then there would be no main storylines. You've already seen all of this, but you could still do all of the other shit. Never again. Never a fucking game. That shit was beyond boring. Like, I would never want to do that shit ever again. Threads of Fate, that's the one, Aggramar, yes. I did it once, and I was like, okay, fuck this. This is the worst thing ever. It took longer to level than it does just doing the quests. And also, after a while, world quests get really boring really fast. So yeah, that was just not for me. That's why I think you are probably right that shortening the main quest line could be beneficial, and if they take it a step further and make that the only thing required, it would help everyone. I think so too. Threads of Fate was a good idea, but the XP scaling was ours. True, dude. Like, the XP scaling is probably what made it not work, is the fact that if you made that decision, you were actually punished, right? It felt like a punishment. As soon as you chose Threads of Fate, it was like, oh, wait, you're going to level very, very slowly now. What happened to the random time traveler in the Bronze Flight campaign? No. I'm not sure. I'd have to go check. Shadowlands itself felt like a punishment. Yeah, that is true. But we've already said Shadowlands didn't happen. We'll just pretend like Shadowlands never happened, right? And then we'll just, yeah, go off of that, because I like that more. This world is a prison. Dude, there's still... Oh, man. I still hate the entirety of what they did to Sylvanas. Don't get me started on that, guys. I'm begging you. I don't want to sit here and complain. You know what? No. I am very much looking forward to the War Within, and I don't need this negativity in my fucking life. So I am not going to think about Sylvanas and the bullshit of Sylvanas' storyline. I just refuse to do that. I'm not doing that. I agree, but Threads was better than doing it before Threads was ever a thing, which is the first time I tried leveling an alt with minimal questing. Well, it's not happening, though. They can't just ignore Shadowlands. We just have to hope for a better perspective to come through to make it a bit better in hindsight. You see, the problem is in this perspective, or in this instance, you can't really do perspective-based storytelling. Because for a lot of the shit of Shadowlands, the player was there. We saw that happen. Manons, you're not going to get hate from me, right? I don't hate on anyone's perspectives in World of Warcraft. I used to do that a lot. until I snapped. I would say until I grew up, until I matured, although maturity is probably a strong word. But until I came to the realization that people's enjoyment is completely subjective. There is no standard of enjoyment. There is no one thing that people could point to and say, this is a fun thing. Because guaranteed there's going to be someone else that says, I don't agree. I don't think that is fun at all. Now, does me disagreeing with you that Shadowlands was fun invalidate your subjective experiences within the Shadowlands? Of course not. You enjoyed it. I mean, I could sit here and say, no, but what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And all you would do is say, yes, but I enjoyed it. I mean, all of my objections are fucking useless because you enjoyed it. So I'm no longer at that position. What I will do is I will critique objectively bad writing. So, for example, you look at a lot of the cinematics in Dragonflight, there were some objectively bad writing happening there. And the reason I can speak to objective bad writing is because I studied it, right? So I know what a good script versus a bad script is supposed to look like. Because I literally went to university for that shit. I'll talk about bad pacing, for example, if it's an objective fact. Still doesn't mean that everyone's going to hate it. You do get a lot of people that like really badly written stories because the story made them laugh or the story made them feel something that other people didn't feel. So it doesn't make it objectively bad for everyone. It just makes it an objectively badly written story. But it doesn't mean that it's a bad story. You can still get people that love badly written stories. It's all, in the eye of the beholder, as they say. My response to people enjoying bad things is, okay, I respect your right of having bad taste. It's still bad, though. But this is the thing. It's not about having bad taste. I'll give you guys a great example of a terribly written story that I absolutely adore. Rules of Engagement. Rules of Engagement is a sitcom, much like The Big Bang Theory, much like How I Met Your Mother, except written terribly. Like, some of the worst writing I've ever seen in my life. In fact, also some of the worst acting. There are some actors in that thing that should never be fucking acting again, and I have not seen them act again, so that's probably a good thing. But I like it. I like it because of Jeff. He's a character in the story, and he's my favorite character in the story. Jeff is great. Jeff is funny. I watch because I laugh at Jeff. So I enjoy watching Rules of Engagement. It's one of my favorite sitcoms to watch. But I can tell you it's objectively bad in terms of writing, in terms of acting. But it doesn't make it bad because I like what Jeff does, and that's perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. I don't like slasher movies, but I respect people who do. Just like Shadowlands, what will likely not be addressed in The War Within, maybe later when the Arathi Emperor is faced. I think we're going to get I don't think people should expect all of the history of World of Warcraft to be addressed in the first saga. But I do think in the subsequent sagas, almost all of the history of World of Warcraft will be addressed. Some might be changed a little, and so on and so forth, right? Heard football fan, how you doing, bro? Kind of like the cult following around the room, pretty much, right? You have these stories that never really break into like the best stories ever, but they have this cult following. There's a small group of people that really loved it, really loved what it is. And again, it is what it is. It's not. This is why I sort of want to move away from saying something is a bad thing and rather be specific when you're going to critique something. So if it's badly written, say that it is badly written. Don't say it is bad. It is bad suggests that it is just bad and no one could enjoy it. But we see so often in the world, a lot of people enjoy a lot of different things. And there is absolutely fuck all you can do about that, right? Sexual kinks should tell you that everyone has different things that they like, you know? It is also dumb to throw around bad taste when having discussions, true. It shuts down conversations, you know? And yeah, if you want to shut down conversations, by all means, you know, tell people their taste is bad. But I don't want to shut down conversations. I want to have more conversations. So, you know, I won't be doing that. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, since we have a little bit of time left, now is your opportunity to ask anything. We can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. What's up? What are you guys thinking about? We don't have enough time to get into another topic because then we don't have enough time to deal really with your questions and your wonderings. So I'll probably be covering some of these topics just in videos throughout the week. Everyone has bad taste in something. It's just pointless to point it out. True. I mean, some people watch me live on Twitch. I'm the last person that's going to start poking at that particular fucking, that particular concept. What's for dinner tonight? Vengeance, I already had dinner, and I had specifically jerky. Just a bunch of jerky, which was fun. Something just popped to my mind. Probably you considered it many times, but what if we take the world as a prison completely as we hear it? We got image of Titan prison in last Titan logo. Well, Hashil, I've already done that. I fundamentally agree with you. I think that when Sylvana said this world is a prison, she was being very, very, very much concise with her words there. I believe that this world is a prison. And you'll have to watch my newest video to see exactly why. New Retcon Chronicles? What the hell is going on with Anathrozim? I have not read the Chronicles yet, son, because I'm in South Africa and I can't get the Chronicles yet. So I'm not sure what's happening with Anathrozim. Do you think the Lost Titan will be Sargeras because the others will be locked away, destroyed? Imagine him and Illidan showing up to fight the Void. Huh. I personally think the Lost Titan is going to be Azeroth. Because the other would-be pretend Titans will be dead. I'm a rich bitch. That's my thinking, at least. Or at least that's what I'm hoping for. Ryan with the $5. Really appreciate the support, bro. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're far too kind, sir. Do you think WoW has had its war in heaven moment? And do you think we will eventually know more about the eternal conflict mentioned by Xalatath? I don't think we've had our war in heaven yet, because I don't think we have the same kind of heaven as you get in the Warhammer 40k universe, for example. I think the war in heaven, in that sense, has pretty much always been going on in World of Warcraft. So I don't think World of Warcraft will ever have that particular war. That being said, though, I mean, I would be surprised if we go through the whole of Midnight and we don't get that. There's also another thing. The Brittle J, thank you so much for hanging out. Really appreciate it. Take care of yourself. Have a wonderful weekend. There's another thing that I quickly... let's just see here. Sorry, chat. Let me just quickly... Which one is it? There it is. How do you fucking zoom out on this? Oh no, okay. This is as zoomed out as it is. Let me just quickly see here. Condemn the endless effort. Hold up, chat. I'm just checking here. Oh, yeah. Here we go. I'm going to read a quick sentence to you guys here. And then you can tell me what you think this is. This is from the newest Chronicles. They cycle. These two separate selves watched the atrocities the Banshee Queen had committed. They fought each other, unwilling to accept that the pain Sylvanas had caused and thought justified had only enabled an enemy of all creation. What does that line tell you guys? DJ, take care of yourself, bro. No. I'm going to give you guys another hint. The light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. Could we view the specific words chosen in the Chronicles as confirmation of the Void's enemy of all? Since in this one, it says an enemy of all creation. The Void says the light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. Could we potentially view that as confirmation? So in other words, the Void never says who the enemy is. The Void only says that the light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. But it never actually tells us who this enemy of all may be. So this is the only reason this jumped out at me is the word an enemy of all creation. That it's such a on the nose decision, right? Why not just say an enemy of creation? Why an enemy of all creation? It struck me as interesting that those would be the words that they would choose there. Dementius used Void and Arcane to destroy Koresh. Void is adjacent to Order and Light is adjacent to Disorder. Foul, why is that? So Spurkicide, I would be careful to look at the exact location of the cosmological forces as they pertain to the positions of the other cosmological forces around them. That map that we saw was merely the Titan's interpretation of the map, right? Or of the cosmos. It wasn't a one-to-one exactly what the cosmos looks like. So in that sense, I would be careful. The light made a bargain with the foul? I don't think so. I think the light struck a bargain with Zuval. So we are told in the Shadowlands that the reason the light attacked Revendreth is because Revendreth took one of the Naru captive, right? But we're never actually told, as far as I remember, why Revendreth captured one of the Naru. Right? Like we're never told anything about that. What if Sire Denathrius suspected that Zuval had struck a bargain with the light, that the light had struck a bargain with Zuval, and at the time Sire Denathrius was still loyal. Sire Denathrius still believed that that Zuval was bad, right? Zuval was a problem. The Nathrazim obviously infiltrating the light. That's what they do. And we know that was the Nathrazim. Sorry, no, it wasn't that it wasn't that they captured an Naru. It was because the Nathrazim infiltrated the light and the light figured out. I remember now. And that's why the light attacked Revendreth. What if the Nathrazim infiltrating the light was because Sire Denathrius had this inkling that this is what was happening, right? And that the light had struck a bargain with Zuval. Then as the light attacked under the orders of Zuval, Sire Denathrius and Revendreth found themselves wholly alone. No one in the Shadowlands would come to help. And this was the moment that he turned to Zuval for help. This is the moment that he turned to Zuval because the rest of the Shadowlands had betrayed him. So that would put the bargain between the light and Zuval in a better, in a lot more light, I would say. Don't boo me. Credit where credit is due. He's due a lot of bad credit, but this one is good credit. Ryan, who's due bad credit? What? Ronan, not so much with Dave. More so with Zuval. Right? So Death is, as far as we can tell at least, not an entity in and of itself. Death is simply a place ruled by entities. So the entity here that the Void would be referring to, if we took all of this evidence and put it together, then Zuval would be the enemy of all. Because the light struck a bargain with Zuval, specifically. The Primus could also be a problematic one, because again, we could ask the question here of why did the Primus not go to help when the light attacked? Right? So it could absolutely be that, because again, from the perspective of the Titans, who wrote the Chronicles Volume 4, Zuval would be an enemy of all creation, because Zuval wanted to dominate all creation. The Primus, on the other hand, would still be completely under the radar. The Primus would be, no one suspects him currently of anything bad. But this is a theory that I have thrown out before. It is one that I actually fundamentally agree with, and I fundamentally believe that. So my perspective on this is, I don't believe that the Primus is the jailer, right? I don't subscribe to that theory. I believe the Primus is the Primus, the leader of Maldraxxus. But I believe that Zuval clearly saw something. I believe that Zuval, as the Arbiter, considered to be the wisest of all of the Eternal Ones, saw something. He saw a problem within the universe. A problem that he could not solve as the Arbiter, and therefore needed to become something else. I think the fact that Zuval imprisons the Primus, probably indicative to part of the problem. Zuval, if the Primus wasn't his biggest issue, or if the Primus wasn't at least part of the problem, I don't see any reason for him imprisoning the Primus. The only thing I can think of is that Zuval saw the Primus playing with forces that he was not supposed to play with. And Zuval realized that if the Primus is allowed to continue to do this, it may threaten the very galaxy that they had sworn to protect. And from Zuval's perspective, he took very much the same line of thinking as Sargeras, which was the galaxy needs to be brought under a singular mind. Right? That's the only way to save the galaxy, is by bringing it under a singular mind, and from there we can ensure that the bad guys never get into control. That would be at least my reading of the lore as far as that goes, because I don't think the Primus is the jailer. I don't see why. Doesn't the Crown of Wolves have domination and light magic bound to it? Yeah, but this is again, like I said, I see no problem with the theory that the Primus has, that the Primus is the one that struck the bargain with the light, because the Titans again would be completely wrong, right? In their view of Zuval being the enemy of all creation, because from the Titans' perspective, they don't know what the Primus is up to, but it is possible that Zuval knew, right? And that's why he captured the Primus. I still go back to the lines Zuval spoke as he was dying, almost as if he was like, what the fuck is happening, and none of this is right, etc. The reaction someone would have when waking up. So you think Zuval may have actually been dominated? I mean, truthfully, that is not impossible. Again, not impossible. The whole of Zuval's body is covered in domination magic. So it would be possible that the Primus is the one that dominated Zuval literally from the start. And that the Primus needed us to take out Zuval because Zuval is the biggest obstacle to his plan. Very, very possible. The one thing that I think you would run into is, well, then again, he could have pretended when he was the rune carver. He could pretend a lot of things. So, yeah, you could probably throw that out there. That is a theory that I would accept as a decent one. Control and order the universe. It destabilizes the balance of the cosmos. Zuval saw this, and the Pantheons are abominations to reality. Their order will ultimately destroy the universe. That I do agree with, Ronan. If that is true, the Primus has seen his plan fail twice, once with Arthas and second with Zuval. Talus, not necessarily. Because you're only judging his plan based on what you think you know of his plan, not based on his actual plan. If his actual plan was to get someone else to remove Zuval from the canvas, so to speak. Because remember, it was the Eternal Ones that decided to banish Zuval rather than to destroy him, because he was their brother, and they hoped that their brother could yet be saved. So it could be that the Primus actually wanted Zuval to die, because Zuval found out what the Primus was up to. And as a result of that, the Primus needed Zuval to die. But since the other Eternal Ones didn't want Zuval to die, the Primus came up with an idea. And the Primus effectively said, what if I can get other people to kill him? What if I could get other people to take him out? And so the Primus sets up this entire thing, acting through Zuval. He activates the Lich King. The Lich King causes a lot of havoc. The Lich King leads directly to Sylvanas, ripping open the sky. We flood in, and we ultimately kill Zuval, the very thing that the Primus wanted us to do in the first place. I can absolutely see that as a viable theory. Realize all that had happened to him. Domination rules all over him. That I agree with. Notice that the domination runes burned into the jailer's robot frame too. Ryan, that was very interesting to me. Absolutely. Bro, I hope we bring Zuval back. No, I don't. We should not bring Zuval back. He is one of the worst villains Blizzard ever created for a reason. Let's leave Zuval to the annals of history, please. We could get better. Like, if the Primus suddenly become an actual villain, that would be super good. Because we already know who the Primus is. And I think he could make for a phenomenal fucking villain if Blizzard were to decide to go that way. We've seen him without them. You have to remember that he got all the runes after being banished from being an Arbiter. Shield Games, yes, but what's your point with that? If you say you have to remember he got all those runes after being banished, what's your point? Is your point that the Primus couldn't have given it to him because he got them only after he was banished? Or is your point that he couldn't have been mind controlled by the Primus because he was already banished before he even got the domination runes? What's your point with that line? With the line of thinking there? Nameless, I agree with you. I mean, I said this at the time, right? I said this at the very moment of the Shadowlands happening. This is not natural. Something here is very fucking off. Okay, so Hashil, to that point, I would say you're making one fundamental mistake. You are assuming that Zuval was banished into the Maw because he was dominated by the Primus. That's not the point we're making. Zuval found out about what the Primus was up to, and that is why he was banished. Right? Because Zuval realized that if the Primus is allowed to do the things that he's doing, it would end the universe. It would be the greatest threat to the universe ever. And so Zuval realized that he needs to put an end to this. That very realization is what led the Eternal Ones to banish Zuval. In his banishment, this is when the Primus takes control of Zuval through domination magic. And then, because the Primus wanted Zuval to be killed, he didn't want him to be banished. But now he's banished, so now the Primus is getting someone else to do his dirty work for him. That is the theory, right? So it's not Zuval getting banished because he was dominated. It's Zuval getting dominated after he was banished and not killed. That's the theory that we're running off of. Yeah, I remember you saying that. That's why I got into watching your streams. Nameless, I appreciate that. It makes sense for death to align itself with order. I wouldn't say it makes sense, but it is what happened. You're welcome, Hashil. How is the Primus the creator of domination magic and fell to Zuval? It was all a ploy. Well, again, we don't know exactly how strong Zuval is. He could have been very powerful. But I can see the theory. I can definitely see that theory. And I can see that theory make a lot of sense. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to the theory wholesale, but I definitely have room for that theory. But then again, I have room for every theory. I'm happy to follow. I'm happy to have 20 different theories about a single topic. And, you know, that's perfect for me. So, yeah, that is just what it is. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give a massive shout out once again to Ryan for the donations tonight. I really appreciate that. Donations like this help keep this podcast going. If you enjoy the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, and we see more of this podcast, please remember to hit that like button, as it does help out a ton. For those of you that might be watching it afterwards, hit the subscribe. And also remember to go over to Patreon. Give $1, because fuck it, why not? You don't get anything, by the way, for that $1. I don't give you shit. But there is $1 that you give to me. You know what? Fuck it. I've just decided something new. Next month at the end, starting next month at the end of every month, I will give away $50 to anyone on the Patreon subscribed for $5. So if you subscribe to Patreon for $5, I'll give away $50 to one random fuck. And if we get 100 people subscribed at $5, I will up that number to 100. If we get 200 people subscribed to $5, I will up that number to 2 people getting $100 every month on the Patreon. Fuck it, why not? Let's do that. Just because I don't really make money on the Patreon. It's just fun to have at this point. So yeah, if you want to subscribe over on the Patreon, go do that. If you don't want to, I don't care. It's all good. I love all of you for hanging out, for spending time with me, for being here with me. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Ladies and gentlemen, have a wonderful weekend. And as always, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.